Warning, this episode contains graphic language and depictions of sacrificial magic, atheist vegan yogis, braided belts, and as always, teen angst. Also, there'll be spoilers for chapters 57 through 61 of Eldest, Book 2 of the Inherent Cycle by Christopher Paolini. Listen at your own risk.
Is this a podcast, or is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. So join us if you want to nerd out. Time to start the podcast and see. Anyway, here's the show.
Hello, readers. I'm Dane Patterson, the host who, much like Eragon, also feels the deep, cold, icy embrace that is the dark call of existentialism and the seemingly meaninglessness of life.
And I'm Jacqui Vanir, and I'm generally a happy person. And is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? The podcast where we might bitch out on sailing across a gargantuan primeval whirlpool, but at least our jokes are upwards of average, I'd say. That's my official rank.
That's the hope.
Yes, upwards of average. I think that's safe.
Shoot high and hope we land somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
If you'd like to support us on Patreon, there's a link in the show notes. If you can or just don't want to, we totally understand. And just ask that you please rate us on Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, and we have been busy on our social medias.
Yeah.
Socials media.
Our socials media.
Socials media.
Yeah, you're with the kids online.
So check us out there. You can find us with the fellow children on TikTok at Is This Just Fantasy Pod, or on Instagram and Twitter, where other washed people hang out, at Just Fantasy Pod. Also, I know that you want to visit our very cool website, isthisjustfantasypod.com, to buy some of our sweet merch and learn some fun website exclusive facts about us.
Heck yeah.
That's what's there. And before we can get back to our high stakes, high seas adventure, it's almost time. I want to take a look back at what we covered on our last episode. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Roran is on Clovis's barge outside of Tyrm, and he makes the captain stop shorter than Clovis would like to avoid getting caught by the Empire. Roran's just threatening people right and left here. And then he decides to bully our sweet barge boy into staying, just chilling in the harbor of Tyrm so that they have a backup plan to get out of town.
Yeah.
He picks 5 villagers to go into the city with him, talking to everyone on the barges and like reflecting on how they've changed during this journey. They're all very grizzled.
Yeah, they're looking rough.
Yes. And Roran and Carvajal Team 6 sneak around Tyrm to find the best road in, entering from the south and avoiding attention by rehearsing cover stories and using traffic as a shield.
Yeah.
They're practiced.
They're now
at this point.
Yeah, they're like full-on rebels now.
Yeah, I think so. They discover that they're poor as hell, which I'd argue they should have known when they couldn't afford a dude named Clovis in a podunk bay city who had 3 barges. But now they're in the big city trying to hire a giant ship, and it's not going well.
No.
They do overhear rumblings about a bankruptcy auction for a mysterious Jode Longshanks' property and decide to meet with the man to swoop in with an offer before the auction can begin. They locate Jode's mansion and insist on speaking with him. And despite his butler's initial denial, he begrudgingly lets them into the manse. Roran and his crew meet with Jode and learn that he's utterly broke too, so they all have that in common. And Roran tries to be a big city savvy guy and undercut the auction still.
Yeah.
But Jode explains that he's utterly broke because he's bankrupt and his creditors own everything. He cannot sell shit. That's how bankruptcy works, Roran.
He's like, no, I don't have any control.
Yes. Jode does offer to help with anything he knows about Tyrm, and he recognizes in the course of this conversation Gertrude's name and realizes exactly who Roran is. Of course, Roran's first reaction is attack with hammer, but Jode is able to defuse the situation by mentioning Eragon, Garrow, and his friendship with Brom. So it's really the trifecta that gets Roran to not do a murder in a man's own home. Roran tells Jode about their journey to Tyrm and their plan to rescue Katrina, while Jode drops the bomb that Eragon's the new rider, and Roran's anger at Eragon is renewed all over again finding this out.
Fair.
Before Roran can go all stronghammer again, Jode entices him by revealing the location of the Rozak's lair and updating him on everything Jode knows about Erebrom's journey up to Eragon's departure from Farthen Door. So Roran and Jode apparently are both fully in the loop now. They know everything about everybody.
Wild. Still dubious to me.
Super wild, yeah. And to kill 2 birds with the most outrageous stone possible, Jode proposes that they pirate literally the nicest ship in the world and escape Tyrm to Serta together.
Hell yeah.
Roran and the Carvajal Six stay with Jode, and does he still count as their rich friend, even though he's bankrupt? His house is still nice.
He is rich in knowledge.
Okay.
I would say.
That's fair. He reveals finally to his wife that he's been an agent of the Varden all along and gets down to planning the heist to steal a war galley. Mandel, a troubled teen, is sent to tell the rest of the villagers, and within a few hours, everyone's a pirate. Bing, bang, boom, Bob's your uncle. Everyone's a pirate. Shockingly, the heist goes pretty much according to their plan.
Yeah, it goes really well.
Yeah, it's dicey and down to the wire, but almost exactly what Jode had in mind, which is great. They sail away from the burning harbor, but they are pursued by a Razak on a leather blocka. And Dane, who saves the day by hitting the creature with an arrow from the deck of the ship?
It's Baldor Strongbow.
Of course it is. And we closed last episode's chapters back in Niswada's point of view. Elva saves her at the last minute from an assassination attempt, leading the Varden to discover good old Gal's cadre of magic assassins, the ominously named Black Hand. She sets Duvranger Gata to dismantling Gal's agents and heads to a meeting with Orin, all in a day's work. Pretty easy.
It's funny that even in the midst of war, you can't escape those meetings that could have been in emails.
Yes, exactly. If only we had more magicians. Orin's gathered with his prime minister and the Varden's council, who have all just heard that their previous intel on Gal's army in Gilead must have been wrong, because it turns out an army 100,000 strong just marched past Urobane, much closer to Serta than they first thought.
Yeah.
And things do not look good for the Varden. If the Empire's army is on the offensive, are they gonna make it?
I don't know.
I don't know either. And
You know
I
what they
don't
have
know
up
if
their
we're going to
sleeve?
find out.
I guess, yeah. Actually, yeah, who knows?
Not right this moment.
Not right now.
Womp.
But they do have something up their sleeve.
What?
Eragon.
Of course, that is true. I mean, we are getting back to our main guy this episode. Any initial thoughts before we get into chapter summaries?
Just a lot is hanging on a bean farmer. There's just a lot.
Per usual, dude.
Seriously.
This world has it bad, I think, a
farmers
little
have
bit.
always just been so integral to everything.
That is true.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I was like, I've got questions about your
No,
job.
I was saying that like this is how it's always been.
That's true.
At the end of the day, it all comes down to farmers.
Yes. I mean, usually for the farming, but in this instance,
For the
it's for
murder.
the magic and the murder.
Exactly. Well, on that note, I really want to just get right into the murder. Do you want to start or say anything before we get started?
No, I'm excited. I'm ready for murder.
Let's do it.
Murder!
Oh, wow. What a pivot this podcast has taken in just such a short time. Chapter 57, Red Blade, White Blade. And unfortunately, this was not written in a Dr. Seuss style, so a little bit of a bummer there. Finally, we're back to Eragon, and man, we only have a few more episodes of this season and not much more to read. And Eragon has had such a rough go.
I mean, he got reborn. I think things are looking up for him as long as he doesn't go to heaven like most reborn saviors do.
Yeah, as long as he stays here. Well, he's not hurt, but I hope that, the wounds of Arya's rejection slowly patch themselves up inside of him.
Those scars are forever. No dragon magic can get rid of those scars, Dane.
Much like Jode thinking about Helen's comments years later.
About her father.
Exactly. Yeah. Eragon will be thinking about that forever. Anyway, Eragon no longer dreams or sleeps anymore. At least not like humans. It reminds me a lot of what we learned about the Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons Pathfinder elves.
Yes.
Arya has left and is gone for Serta. And Eragon is like super missing her. Eragon agrees with Arya on the age gap and is heartbroken. He finally hits him. He finally gets it.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Saphira comforts him, and they grow even stronger.
That's good. I mean, I think we said the last time Eragon and Saphira were on screen, like their tightening bond is really nice to read. I mean, we weren't really realizing how at odds they'd been in this like later stage of their training, so it's good to see them back in action.
I think these two crazy kids might figure it out.
Ow.
Yeah. Eragon's heightened senses make things a little bit easier for him, he sees.
Yeah.
He completes Oryx's puzzle ring in literally seconds because he can both feel and see patterns in the rings that he didn't see or feel before.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and Eragon also realizes he can still grow a beard, which is cool.
Oh, great.
Still not a full elf.
Important.
Yeah, no matter how much he's changed, he's still...
Integral integral to the plot of these books. I'm glad it made it to the chapter summary.
It had to be on the chapter summary.
Burning questions.
Yeah.
Can he still grow facial hair?
We had people writing in, all right? I'm just giving the fans what they wanted.
Yes.
Eragon goes to his sword training, and as a kid, I remember being like, yes.
Do it.
Yes, because me, much like Auric, who has come to watch this morning, it was obvious that I wanted to know like what had changed with his body.
Yeah.
Auric wants to know.
Yes.
And it's so funny.
Listen,
So Vanir.
Dirk Grimston Cheatham didn't raise no fool, Dane.
Yeah.
He wants to see what's up.
He's just in the back, like painted face, like big finger, foam
That's
finger.
my boy.
Don't scream at Cheatham! He's so funny. So Vanir, who we all like love hate, is wait, who's worse, Vanir or Sloane?
Ooh, I'm going Sloane. Sloane fully unfounded.
Yes.
Vanir maybe is Draco Elfoy, but like I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Kind of get it. In a way, I get it more than Draco Malfoy and Harry Potter.
Yes, I agree.
More at stake.
I don't think Vanir's a problem
Well,
actually at all.
Actually, no, they are exactly the same.
I don't.
Harry Potter was responsible for the demise of Draco's family. Yes, his family was evil.
I was like, there's a little bit of a difference
But
there.
I know how you feel about the elves in this book. Just saying.
I don't think they're evil. Anyway, Vanir and Eragon start to spar, and hilariously, he's so much stronger than he was that when Eragon goes to like pull out his sword, he like throws it across the room.
This.
It goes through a tree, and Vanir like cockily is like, "Watch your sword," and he tries to pull it out and like can't.
Yeah.
He's like, "What the hell?" So good. So Eragon describes that Vanir seems like he's moving slower, and it's super easy to push him away and dodge. And Eragon realizes that not only has he been healed, but he's as fast and as strong as an athletic elf.
Amazing.
Freaking dope.
Not just a run-of-the-mill elf.
He's not, yeah.
Not like a sedentary desk job elf.
No, this isn't your poetry elf. This is your sword swinging elf. So Vanir's no match for Eragon, even though Vanir's still good.
Yeah.
Eragon just beats the shit out of him.
Amazing.
Breaks his arm.
Crazy.
Brutal. Vanir changes his tune pretty quick about not liking Eragon.
Weird the way you would do that with a man who could immediately kill you.
Yes, he's like, oh, sorry, my bad.
Much like Clovis.
Exactly. He's like, sure, Stronghammer, no problem. I didn't even think about that. He gives like some respect and apologizes. He explains himself, and I guess he's not as bad as Sloane because he was scared they would lose the war, and now he's gained hope because Eragon's been healed. He even like says he's gonna keep his broken arm.
Not the hope.
Yes, right. As a memento of the time he crossed swords with Eragon Shadeslayer.
And he kind of phrased it like that,
Yes,
didn't he?
yes.
Bold choice.
It's weird, but okay. Auric is overjoyed. He's like losing his mind. Imagine he's losing his mind in the background.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we're doing it. He did it.
Dirk
He did
Grimes. Dirk Grimes.
Yeah. He's like, he beat Nelf. He beat you. Yeah, it's so funny. So anyway, I'm glad Eragon, just got into like solid fit, like revenge bod.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Revenge bod for sure.
Right when all this stuff's
Nothing
popping
you
off.
love more than revenge.
I love revenge. Even revenge bots. Eragon still has time to practice, and so he starts working the bow.
Hey.
Yeah, got to get them reps in, brah. No pain, no gain. Eragon breaks his bow. He's so strong, like right away. He's super sad. Garrow had given him that bow, and it was kicked into so many memories as a kid. It was the only thing he had left from like Carvajal.
Oh, that's sad.
Poor dude. Also, I forgot this. It's the first time he ever uses magic. When he says Brisingar in the first book.
That's right. I thought you meant like to fix his bow in the scene, which I was like, what?
What? He uses a lot of magic.
He's pretty magical, Dane.
All the time. No. So it's the first time he used magic, so he's just kind of sad.
He doesn't use magic to fix his bow, does he?
No.
Weird choice, but okay.
Okay. Yeah. It's like
I'm so sad and there's nothing I can do about
what
it.
will I ever do?
Moving on.
There's like an elf singing to a tree and a branch growing. He's like, what can I possibly do?
How could I fix my bow? My Papagero.
Auric's like working his Urgle bow. I don't know. Anyway, Saphira says something that made me chuckle here. She calls the bow a stick thrower. And I love these insights into Saphira and how she sees the world. Finally, we get to Oramus and Glader for their post, like, reincarnation lesson.
Yes.
Yeah. And Ormus tells Eragon that a gift from the dragon such as he has received has never been given to anyone else.
He's first.
Yeah, Eragon's special in a lot of ways.
Yes, you can take the boy out of the bean farm, Dane. But you can never take the bean farm out of the boy. Remember that when you think of his broken bow.
You must have had magic beans. that Eragon. Ormus then makes Eragon report the transformation, kind of like what's the extent of it so far. And Ormus asks if Eragon resents his body change. So that was nice.
I do too. I thought that was a good perspective, especially for how much we saw, Eragon ruminating after the change, even Eragon ruminating over like taking on a more elven appearance as far back as the first book, and Roran's like thoughts about this same concept. I'm really glad it's something I think keep checking in with.
Yeah.
And not something that's just presented as like, it's great, that's all.
It's funny because that's what Eragon essentially said. He's like, I actually don't resent it, but I think I would have felt weird if no one asked me how I was feeling.
Yes. He's like, I'm just happy to be asked.
Yeah, he's like, thanks,
I'm just happy to be here.
He's like, I love it, but thanks for asking.
Yes, super nice.
Ormus is getting worse. He doesn't do the dragon yoga with Eragon. It explains that it took all of his strength to come outside, and that the reason he's so weak is it took all of his magic basically to do the Agadi Blodrum, and
just to like be there.
And so
Magic Daddy.
Yeah. It dawns on Eragon in this moment that Ormus might feel left out or scorned here by the dragons because he was not healed after all. Eragon finds that his transformation did not make him perfect. He still has to master the dragon yoga.
Yes, he's still not like perfect at the Rimgar.
Yeah.
And I think actually maybe he's like one reincarnation forward, 2 steps back, because he gets a little worse right at the Rimgar because he doesn't know how to balance with his new strength.
We're seeing that like he's still learning what he can do, and it's throwing him off a little bit. Yeah. So this chapter ends with weeks of training going by and Eragon understanding his changes and how they're affecting him. And without the pain and worry, he learns faster, and with the increased strength, he learns magic spells that would have killed him if he was a human.
Yeah.
He's essentially crushing it, but he's antsy to go. He's feeling that a storm is coming.
So interesting.
And he can't help but think of his lady love.
Of course.
Arya.
Of course.
And that's where we end.
Yes, that takes us to chapter 58, Visions Near and Far. And this is a beefy one, Dane, buckle up.
Okay.
This chapter starts with Eragon. I mean, it's just an armchair. I don't understand.
You don't have seatbelts in yours?
No. Did you want me to die here for all the sudden stops?
Eragon. Kevin said this was normal. I called him Eragon.
I knew it. It was bound to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, this chapter starts with Eragon heading out for his morning stump sesh and having the epiphany that his meditation isn't just showing him the animals and insects of the glade, but he's now able to sense the plants as well and all of their consciousnesses. And I'm like, what is going to be left for him to eat?
I know, seriously.
The diet's looking dicey.
He's like, I can't eat that radish.
I know.
It had children.
But per usual, I do love the description of the plant consciousnesses here. It's so cool. It's like a vast, decentralized, like slowly sparking and coalescing like stars in the galaxy that he can see revolving around him in the dark.
It's super cool.
So cool. And this is what leads Eragon essentially to nirvana here. Like he's getting a full on like enlightenment breakdown. He becomes, this is a quote, he becomes a non-entity, a void, a receptacle for the voices of the world. And then he thinks, is this what a god feels like?
Oh, wrong turn. Turn away.
No. We know you were reincarnated. We know you've been reborn, but like that way lies madness can confirm. Definitely can guarantee.
Maybe him and Galbatorix can bond over this.
Yes, maybe a bit. I'm a little worried. But he goes to Ormus after this to tell his master that he finally listened until he heard no more, which was the initial instruction for stump time. And when Ormus asks if he understood it all, Eragon says no. And Ormus congratulates Eragon for his achievement and says he's graduated from his apprenticeship.
Okay.
This was it. This was the lesson.
All I could think of is like someone like at the first year of writer school, but they're going to make you sit at a stump. Just tell them no and you'll pass.
And then you just have like an oaf blundering through the rest of rider training.
Exactly.
I know it is impressive that with a bunch of like adolescent boys, they were able to keep this shit under wraps for so long. Very crazy.
I'm telling you, I think they might have made some people disappear. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not saying you're wrong. So Oramus also says here that Eragon now, because of this, would be considered a full member of the Order of Riders if Galbatorix had not ever risen to power and, done that genocide. Yes, very cool. So Eragon's finally made it. Our little BB.
Officially
Get
a
your
rider.
cap and gown. Your diploma.
That's so funny.
Exactly. So at this point, because he's graduated, the teaching doesn't stop ever. Eragon's just moving on to his PhD program. Oramus teaches Eragon a secret of magic that Galbatorix may not know, is how it's framed.
Okay.
Which involves essentially drawing energy from other sources than the spellcaster's body. So this is where Oramus explains that, like, you've been able to draw energy from Saphira. This is a thing you can do with pretty much any consciousness that you can connect to.
Gotcha.
So it's a big deal. Eragon successfully extracts a sphere of water from the stream they're standing by using only the energy he can glean from the forest around him, so none from his own body. But it causes the deaths of smaller creatures that Eragon was in contact with when they died, and he's horrified by this. Like, he immediately is like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck.
I don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, the way it's described too, being connected, being in the mind of a creature as it's dying is understandably a very jarring experience.
It's like dying 100 times or whatever for him, right? Because he dies all the time, with all the creatures.
Essentially, yeah. So it's like, even if the creature is small, like an insect, the magnitude of the death is the same when you kill it or when you're connected to it as it dies. This is kind of something Glader hinted at when he wanted Eragon and Saphira to be able to disconnect their consciousness if one of them should be wounded. I think this is a big part of that.
Oh, that's what he's talking about.
Yes, and like, this is such a small way that this is happening because they're not, one soul melded here. Eragon's just sharing their consciousness. But I think that's got an implication there too. And Oramus explains that the technique was not taught to riders before they'd achieved this stump time enlightenment because of this destructive potential, essentially.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yes. Oramus also teaches Eragon that it's possible to exchange energy with other living beings, but not to draw from the fundamental forces of nature, he says. That's a quote, like light or fire. So it's maybe a little opaque what he means by that, but I think we saw in previous chapters too that Eragon was really excelling at magics that involved these like energetic forces.
Gotcha.
So you can't necessarily draw like energy from the heat of a fire in order to like shape a sphere of water.
Okay, that makes sense.
I guess just a rule.
That's like, magic, duh.
Magic. He adds that logic actually says it could be done, but nobody's managed to do it yet. So it's not exactly magic, duh. He's just
Why would he tell our little bean farmer Eragon this? Eragon's going to be like, look at the flames.
Well, because he adds that if you could do something like that, you could kill Galbatorix immediately. No further thought. No questions.
No questions asked.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, great. Now Eragon's just going to be like finishing his PhD dissertation in a cave for the rest of his life, trying to figure out how to do this.
Oh my gosh.
But that's where their like advanced magic lesson ends for the day.
Okay.
As he's kind of teaching Eragon secrets of their order that he's not sure, even because Galbatorix, when his dragon died, was so young, he's not sure if Galbatorix progressed this far in his training.
So this is like, you have to be a writer already, and slowly we like drip out some of our greater secret stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
So a few days later, as they're continuing to train these more secretive rider magics, Eragon asks Oramus about the elven religion. He gets to thinking about brass tacks here, and maybe a bit about the religious ceremony he just attended. Yeah. So Oramus says they're essentially atheists who are like die-hard stands for the scientific method. It's like, oh, if we can prove it, then we'll believe it. And you're like, cool.
Says all the people who like body mod into wolves and like sing to trees.
I know.
Yeah.
Oramus says he can't prove the existence of gods. He can't disprove them either. But he says that elves have never seen a miracle in all their like millennia long studies of nature. They've never witnessed a miracle.
Right.
So they essentially believe they're not possible.
I don't know.
And somehow Eragon seems shocked to hear this. Like, dude.
He's like, what?
He like literally did not know they were atheists. Even though that's something that's like been tiptoed around.
Is that what Arya hints at? Is that they're basically
totally
atheists?
Yes, yeah. But he's truly. He was just too busy staring at Arya. I think he did not hear a word that ever came out of her mouth.
He was just always nodding. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
I'm gonna hit on you again tomorrow. Yeah. It's not gonna work any better.
Just keep trying.
Yes, that's our guy. So yeah, he did not pick up on this from her. And he
Okay.
really is kind of reeling. He's like, how do you not believe in anything? And it sends him thinking about what he grew up believing, which I think is an interesting point to the haters. He thinks he reveals a little bit about what passes for religion in Carvajal. He says they don't have a unifying belief system, but they do all practice the same rituals and share a lot of the same superstitions about the way the natural world works around them. So I'm like, okay.
But even how this is framed, I will say a little thing is this only happens when the elves tell him.
Yes, not the dwarves.
Yeah, he gets a full, beautiful, amazing temple, and then he's drinking, they're hanging out, he gets a magical item, he's just been adopted, and he doesn't think about this at all. The elves tell him he's atheist. He's like, oh gosh, really gotta rethink all my religious beliefs.
I guess I could see where the dwarven religion maybe fits in if it's mostly rituals and superstitions that the people of Carvajal share. I think maybe the dwarven overarching religious myths could fit into that in most places.
You just mapped it into his existing
kind of
stuff.
Assimilated it in, where here it definitely flies directly in the face of none of that shit exists.
That's
is what
not real.
Oramus is telling him.
Yeah.
And Eragon realizes as he's thinking through this, he's learned some of the science essentially behind what he'd previously mistaken for what is supernatural in Carvajal. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. And he follows up with something I liked. He also realizes here he believes in some otherworldly forces. That's a direct quote of words that he's like, okay, well, I think my belief system personally is going to incorporate otherworldly forces. And he thinks to himself, that's something I have in common with the dwarves. That does seem more true to me than whatever Oramus is talking about.
Well, the atheist thing strikes me weird in a world where magic exists. It's I don't know. That strikes me as a little strange. I just, you know what I mean?
Exactly. I think that probably is a big motivator for Eragon to be like, well, something else is going on here. I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
I'm not positive that it's exactly this Guntera Hellsbog situation.
Yes.
But I think
Thank you for living Sindri out of your mouth.
You're
our
welcome.
Dirt god will have smote you.
Yes.
I'm so glad. I'm glad you saved us
I would
both.
never take her name in vain, Dane.
Hail Sindri.
Hail Sindri. This is a Sindri positive podcast.
Yeah, praise be.
Praise be. As Eragon's still talking all of this through with Oramus, Oramus gives us the classic "Is this your god?" kind of a line, making the point that if Alagasia does have some sort of god, that god or gods are a bunch of assholes.
Kind of a mean god.
Yes, which is a fairer point of atheists that I could get behind sometimes. Eragon still doesn't like that though. He doesn't love, and what really is ruffling his feathers here is that the elves believe nothing happens when you die and there's no greater purpose to your life.
Ah, yes.
Which I think
existentialism.
is the existentialism.
The meaninglessness of life.
That's correct.
Yes.
But Oramus kind of wraps all this up by saying they don't need something bigger. They're responsible for themselves and uphold their morals out of genuine goodness and not fear of some retribution. So that's kind of where they leave things.
And thus we should imagine Sisyphus happy. It's essentially what he tells Eragon.
I mean, pretty much, yeah. And Eragon's like, well, I guess I'll think about that a bit more. So Eragon struggles with what he believes and its implications kind of for the rest of the day. He heads home to his treehouse. He is thinking here, is every religious person I've ever met crazy? That might be kind of a problem.
What a hard pivot for Eragon.
Well, I think because what he's realized is okay, some of what I believed is, I know I could provably say it's untrue, some of the superstitious stuff. Does that mean every person I know who has a religion just believes things that are lies? So
he's basically learning about ignorance.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's for the next few days. He's ruminating on this. He's still training and going to class and stuff, but it seems like the bulk of what he's torn up about until he has another spooky dream.
Oh, no.
I know, it's been a while. This one's a waking dream, naturally, because he doesn't sleep anymore.
He doesn't sleep anymore. He's more of an elf than a human.
Way more of an elf. So I'm just going to read the dream directly because it is fucking spooky.
We've had so many of these. Let's do it. I'm closing my eyes.
Oh,
I'm getting comfortable.
Well, don't. Just open your eyes in trance like an elf.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. A visual gag for a podcast or an audio medium. Watch us on YouTube. You'll see Dane make the scariest face I will have waking nightmares about for the rest of my life.
Okay, I'm going to relax. I'll close my eyes.
Okay,
Here we go.
He saw Garrow lying dead in Horst's house, then Brom dead in the lonely sandstone cave, and then the face of Angela, the herbalist. All the people closest to him. Sorry, narrator adds. And then the face of Angela, the herbalist, who whispered, "Beware, Argent Lamb, betrayal is clear, and it will come from within your family. Beware, Shade Slayer." Then the crimson sky was torn apart, and Eragon again beheld the two armies from his premonition in the Bior Mountains. The banks of warriors collided upon an orange and yellow field, accompanied by the harsh screams of gore crows and the whistle of black arrows. The earth itself seemed to burn. Green flames belched from scorched holes that dotted the ground, charring the mangled corpses left in the army's wake. He heard the roar of a gigantic beast from above that rapidly That's it.
That's it?
That's how it ends.
I was like,
Did I sell it? Did I do
you
it?
did.
Wow.
Okay, closing my eyes, really getting into it. I'm starting to believe that maybe Eragon has like a lot of nightmares.
Yeah, a lot of nightmares
not
for
fun.
sure. No, it's not great. So he's jolted awake. The reason the dream ends so abruptly is he's jolted all the way awake by his anti-scrying security device, which I'm like, did Christopher Paolini invent a magical Ring doorbell like a decade early? That's what this reads like to me. People are just hearing that fucking annoying chime on their phones all the time with the hammer necklace.
That's hilarious.
And he spends the rest of the night with the uneasy sense that something's wrong. So instead of trying to do his like waking trance again after that, so he has this terrible dream. Somebody tries to scry him, and he spends the rest of the night studying.
So are these prophetic, you think?
I think some of them have got to be, but they seem so different from one another. Like some of them clearly fall into prophecy camp. I mean, there was the sleep scrying of Arya, which was like obviously definitely real. I don't know. And then there's the dream where like Garrow turned into
a
Razak. Like that has to be fake.
But there's been like 4 more.
Unless a Razak can shapeshift, in which case like count them even creepier than we thought.
We've got the boat one that's happened a few times with the crying person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just wondering.
I think they've got
a prophet.
I mean, his rebirth points to in some way for sure.
But there is no god in Alagasia.
Is this your god? I do love that from Oramus.
So funny.
So at dawn, after this spooky night, at dawn, Eragon is greeted by Blogden, remember the albino raven?
Oh, yeah.
Who flies through his window and says some more creepy shit as if Eragon didn't have enough.
Poor Eragon.
And when Eragon asks the raven what the fuck his little poem meant, Blogden just says, "Son and father alike, both as blind as bats." When Eragon presses, Blogden gives him another riddle, a second different creepy riddle, before stealing something shiny from Eragon's desk and flying back away. An odd interaction, and classic Bean Farmer decides to, wait a while to question the clairvoyant talking bird who seems to know his father's identity.
He's just like, weird.
Yeah.
Want some breakfast?
It's like, I'll question him, but like later.
like not now though. Like I'm hungry.
This guy.
Yeah.
In the meantime, though, Eragon wakes Saphira to tell her about his spooky night, and they decide to try to get in touch with Arya by scrying the people around her because Arya's warded herself. So they're like, well, let's try to scry whoever Arya's with, because this is very spooky and we need answers from our girlfriend who wants to avoid it, who went to a different country to avoid us.
So they're calling her friends and be like, hey, put her on FaceTime.
Yes, I'm like, what is happening? He's a mess.
He's a menace to society.
Yes. So he starts with Niswada. He scries her. And I'm like, he should not be able to do this. She should also be warded. This is a problem.
It's a little intrusive for sure.
Yes. She's in the middle of a war council being named the general of Serta and the Vardens combined forces. So she's big queen president now.
Yeah.
Big queen general president.
I love this.
Queen president general? General queen president.
She's the general queen president.
Incredible. He also catches Elva in the scrying, but he doesn't know how he's seeing her because he doesn't recognize her. So he just sees like a weird, like old lady
like
child.
Chucky doll.
Yeah, basically. And he's like, I don't know why I'd be able to see that toddler who looks very scary.
Never seen her before
in my life. So I do like that little like Easter egg. And after hearing that they're gearing up for war and confirming that Arya's alive, he comes back out of his scry spell to Saphira and kind of gives her the download on what he's seen. They think Ormus must know about the impending war because he scries everybody everywhere all at once.
Gotcha.
Basically.
He's one with the land and the land is one with him.
Yes, exactly. So they're like, he must know. Why wouldn't he have told us? And they're a little mad about this. Eragon specifically is like very disturbed about what else might be happening in Alagasia that he doesn't know about. And I'm like, that's everything that's happening in Alagasia, my guy. Why would you know about anything?
I was also struck by this because Ormus has seemed like a pretty like solid, straight shooting dude.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, like I was surprised at his instant like, why didn't he tell us anger?
Yeah.
It's like, well, clearly he thinks he had a reason to. Like even without even reading further, it's like clearly there's a reason.
There must have been something.
Yeah.
For
Weird.
sure. But yeah, Eragon is mad about this. But he starts scrying around because he's like, well, what else could be happening that is not under my watchful eye?
He starts like panic calling everybody he knows.
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, is everyone in trouble? So he scries Roran. He barely recognizes his cousin at this point, but he can tell he's on a ship because he can't see the ship, but he like by the way Roran's like walking around and like and he can see a lot of the people around Roran. So he knows that Roran's with the villagers of Carvajal, but they're all like, I just picture like a black plane moving under all of them.
And he's just like, they all look like
Tilted.
shit.
Yeah, basically. He's like, they all look scary. And why is Roran with all of them in a place I've never seen? And then he recognizes Jode is with Roran.
Hell
and he's
yeah.
like, what is happening? Is everybody hanging out without me? Eragon's like,
Are they all friends now?
Yes, he's like, did I not get the invite to the party? He scries Tyrm as a whole, actually. I think after he sees Jode, he's like, well, are they in Tyrm? What is happening? He sees that the wharves of Tyrm are completely gone. So it's a harborside city with no harbor.
Nice.
No docks.
Good job, Stronghammer.
No, he changes gears a little bit and scries Garrow's farm, I think, to see if maybe they're there. And the rest of Carvajal, and he sees the entire town at this point is burnt to a crisp. It is razed. It's flattened.
So those few people, they're gone.
No, Ivor definitely, hopefully made the Empire remember the villagers.
You remember Carvajal?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm hoping so.
I'm hoping so too. I want that story.
Yes. Well, I don't. It has a very bleak ending, Dane. You want the story that ends with a bunch of villagers burning inside their homes?
I mean, I think it'd be like a cool Rogue One Star. You know, Star, like it's a tragedy. Well, spoiler alert.
Yeah, what the hell?
If you haven't seen Rogue One, it doesn't end well for those people. It would be kind of cool to see like one like Last of Mohicans, like what's his name, Laurel,
What?
the guy who stays in Carval.
Oh, Ivor.
Yeah, Ivar running around with a bow in the like woods, like shooting soldiers. That could be kind of cool, right?
Okay, that would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
So all this scrying really lights a fire under Eragon's ass to get out into the world and help fight. He's like, things are going wrong for sure. And in my headcanon, the last line of this chapter finally is where Eragon's balls drop and his voice finally changes from, is this what a god feels like? To, it is time.
It's time.
Or like maybe if you prefer with a more of like a, it's time, brah.
I feel like he'd be like more regal, like, it's time. Like, you know.
I don't know if that's a voice I can recreate, but I'll leave the Eragon quotes to you from now on because I do like it. But that's where we end the chapter.
All right, awesome. Let's go to chapter 59, gifts. I'm so glad I got the GIF chapter, as I love gifts in real life. This chapter starts with Eragon packing up and settling up Saphira. Eragon tells Auric he has to come with him right away.
Yes.
And get food. And Auric's like, what? No? And he's like,
thank you.
You're going to have to fly on Saphira. And Auric's like, not doing that.
Even less no.
And then he's like, I'm leaving or you're staying. And Auric's like, okay, we're going. And I'm flying on Saphira. Or Eragon then yells at Ormus. Interesting choice for not telling
his nicest daddy, his most emotionally available dad.
I mean, we've gone with Magic Daddy, we've gone with Dragon Daddy, we've gone with Elven Daddy, but really Ormus is like kind daddy.
Emotionally constant daddy.
Yeah, emotional constant daddy. I mean, come on. What are you doing, dude?
Not great.
So
tough look for our guy.
I know. He yells at Ormus for not telling him sooner about the attack on the Varden. And Saphira tells Eragon to chill.
Yes.
She's like, hey, man, chill out a little bit. And I agree with her this time. Chill, dog. Well, he doesn't at first. He does push harder. And Ormus tells him to look around. He's like, do you see elves? He's like, there was not a lot of us. There's less of us now. The world's changing, man.
Yeah.
The queen has already rallied the elves. We're going.
Yes, because I think part of Ormus's or part of Eragon's like repudiation of nicest man in the universe here is like, why wouldn't you have told me we're going to war? Why are you all going to war? Like people are in trouble and you need to help and you've been hiding in this forest. And
Ormus he explains this.
Yes,
you know,
and he's like, we're going, dude.
Yeah, he's like, we're going.
Why don't you fucking go?
Yeah, and he basically is also like, hey, Eragon, you're gonna be alone to face Galbatorix if that happens.
Yeah.
So I wanted to push the training as much as possible to that end, because if Ormus is like, if Galbatorix is there, like I want you to be as prepared as possible.
Yes.
And then he's like, and if he is there, just bug him. Don't engage directly.
Yes, just like poke him.
Yeah, he's like, keep him away from the Varden, but don't like fight him face to face.
Yes.
And I feel like that goes without saying, but
yes.
I imagine Eragon's like, what? I could take him.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is a solid enough reason
to
keep Eragon in the dark? I agree. I think I'm with Ormus here. It's a little murky though. I'm not like
it's a gamble.
Like an immediate and happy yes about it, but I do agree. I think Ormus maybe says even that like if a couple more days had gone by, he would have told Eragon. He was like, I would have told you at like the last possible moment for you to still make it in time for the battle, essentially, right?
Yes. And I also think there's something though that I think we forget about this in like our modern world, but like if you're really going to trust a teacher, like he sought Ormus out.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to seek out a teacher, you're going to give them your trust, then you got to give him your trust.
Yeah.
And Ormus has not betrayed that trust, and he was honest about this. So I would say, I agree. Like maybe Ormus pushed it. There was a risk there.
Yeah.
But I trust Ormus's judgment, and it turned out that it wasn't too late.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I get it. I get why he's upset, but also I get Ormus.
Yeah.
Justice for Ormus. Anyway, Ormus asks him to return if he survives the battle because they have more to learn. He makes Eragon a promise.
Okay.
He does. Then Ormus gives presents.
Gifties.
There's 3.
I will give you these presents 3.
Yeah, exactly. First is some alcohol.
Hey.
Fuck yeah. You get some foul nerve, the liquor that sustains and gives you a pep in your step.
Yes.
It's like a special Ormus brand. So basically just like a Four Loko.
Oh my God.
That's his first
but
gift.
with magic benefits.
Yeah, it's tasty.
Great.
And then the second is a fashion accessory.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's the belt of Baloth the Wise.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a classic D&D item here. It's long. It's black and blue sword belt with
Very
12
cool.
diamonds on
Hell
it.
yes.
And Eragon can store energy in these.
Okay, cool.
It's like a special like magical writer item. The diamonds are all perfect.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, they got them from the dwarfs.
Okay.
Some of them were traded or bought over like thousands of years.
Damn.
And some of them were even mined by the writers themselves. So they hold like the most amount of energy you possibly can put in them.
Shit.
Each and every one. And there's a lot of them.
That's crazy.
Really cool. So I love that.
Are they empty when he gets it?
They're empty when he gives them, and it's the belt. There's one problem with this belt. It's a braided belt.
A pretty big con here. I don't know if Eragon should accept it.
I don't know if I would wear it. Seriously. I'd be like, look, this is wonderful, but a little gaudy.
Troll.
It's a little gaudy. It's braided. You should just give it to someone who wants it. You know what I mean? I'm just kidding.
The worst.
I'm just kidding. The third gift is a scroll. Ormus made a beautiful work scroll of Eragon's poem from the Blood Oath celebration, and Eragon is like very moved by this.
Yes.
He cherishes it. It's so nice.
He said of all the gifts, that's his favorite.
Yeah, this made me feel things.
I know.
Ormus follows it by doing the exchange elves do when they say hello or goodbye to indicate that he has much respect for Eragon.
Yes, or Ormus does it first, right?
Yeah,
he
initiates it, and he goes all the way to the end. You know, like do the extra titles.
Magic Dad.
It's so nice. And then with that, Eragon sets off.
Yes.
He thinks this place feels more like home than he's felt in a long time.
Oh.
And he has to stop at Queen Islanzadi before he heads on out.
Yes.
So he lands there, and she is displeased with him leaving. Why? Who knows? I don't know. I'm not even going to try to defend her. I don't understand.
I think it's maybe just to like drive home the point that Ormus wanted to keep him as long as like maybe just to back up that thought process.
Whatever
from
it is.
Someone who's crazier.
Yeah, it's like, okay, Queen, whatever.
Yeah.
But she redeems herself a little bit. She relays something super exciting. The elves will start their own campaign.
Yeah.
Coming from the north through the Empire.
To front war.
Two-front war. Yes. So hard to fight a two-front
Yes.
war. Galbatorix, we're coming for you. She also sends Eragon some help.
Yes.
She has sent 12 spellcasters. I guess for elves, this means master magic users or something, because we don't know.
Yes, we
This
have
again-
no idea.
Yeah, this again confuses it to be
Yeah.
under his command.
Very cool.
They're 12 best.
And they're just going to run, right?
Yes, they most likely won't arrive until after the battle, but if
Okay.
he survives, they will be there to help him night and day. They're going to
Great.
defend him. 2 shifts of 6.
Hey, if you don't die,
Yeah.
we'll watch you.
Yeah.
We got your back.
But I gotta say, like 6 mega, like magic focused expert elves, dude, that's dope. Bodyguards,
Sold,
24
yeah.
hours a day. I
Very
love
cool.
that. Then he gets gifts, more gifts.
More gifts?
She gives Eragon a beautiful bow.
Yes.
With beautiful arrows. It's a special elven bow. It was sung by the Queen Islanzadi herself.
That's very cool.
And the string will never break.
That's so cool.
She enchanted it herself, and she also enchanted the arrows with if he uses her swan feathered arrows. That's so funny. They won't miss.
It's a lady bow, Dane.
It's
It's
a
got to
la-
be delicate and feminine.
It's fancy. So she finally gives Arya Eragon at the end a message to Arya.
Yeah.
She's like, also just tell her that we miss her.
Tell my baby girl.
Yeah.
That we all miss her.
And I just want
That's
Eragon.
nice.
I want Eragon to be like, yes, I'll tell her that when you help my country, because that's
Oh
how
my
we
God,
work. That's how we work.
Dane.
It's all pro quo.
Easy for you to say.
But not,
Why wouldn't you just
apparently.
hope that Eragon would tell Arya exactly what her mom said and then nothing else? Tell Arya no other words.
Well, we'll see if that
No.
happens. When Eragon finally gets to Auric, it's so funny.
Yes.
He's like, about time you got here, man. Let's fucking go.
Yes, Auric is stoked
He's like,
to
I was-
get out of the elves.
I was packed like 4 hours ago.
Yes.
And then here's some quotes as he gets on Saphira. He says, and how, I'm going to do this in a Dwarven accent.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
Please.
And how by Morgothal's black beard am I supposed to get up there? A cliff has more handholds than you. It's the first one. Once he gets up
He's
there.
having a little tough time, Jane.
He's a little guy. And then once he gets up there, he tapped one of the ivory spikes between his legs and said, "There be a good way to lose your manhood as ever I've seen." He turned into a pirate halfway through there, but whatever.
Well, we're getting to piracy. Calm down.
Also, we learned that Orc is the first dwarf they believe to ride a dragon.
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. It's so cool.
Yeah, this-
He deserves that.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Auric is the best.
He's the best, dude. The chapter ends with a farewell serenade by an elven woman as they fly south.
Yes, just the way they came into Elismira. They're leaving Elismira.
Yeah, I actually pictured like Sabenya.
Oh my God. And the singing. Still the singing. Always the same. I think you're a perfect 11 for 11 in this season so far.
I can't stop, won't stop.
Oh, God. Well, that does take us to chapter 60, The Maw of the Ocean. We're going to wrap up with 2 Roarin' chapters this episode.
Let's do it.
Yes, and this first one's pretty short, so I'm going to summarize both of them. Much like Niswada, I get angry when I get back to one of my faves, and I don't get enough stuff to talk about. So this chapter opens on a charming scene, Roarin' heaving over the side of the dragon wing as it races ahead of a raging storm, Dane.
His vomit trudged up his throat.
That's correct. It had no other choice. The dragon wing, it turns out, we get a little like story through flashbacks here. I think this is a little bit of a pattern for Roarin's story,
Okay.
which I like. The dragon wing has been pursued by 3 black sailed ships that are gaining on them.
Okay.
Ever gaining. They're faster than the dragon wing, which is
Okay,
bad.
That's not good.
One must have a magician on board, they've deduced, because all the ships are firing arrows at them pretty constantly. But the arrows from one of the ships are alarmingly accurate, wreaking havoc on the dragon wing's defenses. So the arrow will like fly through the string of a ballista or like.
I love seeing like a magic user that wasn't Eragon or one of these elves.
Yeah.
This was very cool.
Yes. And just one who's just finessing the game.
Yes.
For sure. So Roarin doesn't think they want to take him alive anymore based on this behavior. He's like, I think they're going to be fine if I die. I don't know if he's right about this, but this is his thought process right now. He's like, they're cool if they kill me.
I actually think he might be right.
Really?
Yeah, because don't they use fire here on this boat?
We'll get there, but yeah.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
do eventually.
Okay, yeah, I think they're trying to kill him.
Well, that's after they die, so I think maybe they don't
It's
care
like a
anymore
last.
after
Oh,
that.
you're right. It's the sorry spoilers.
Wow, not something I'm going to talk about in 10 minutes.
I'm so
No,
sorry.
it's fine. I don't care. So Yeah, Roran's thinking that. I don't know that I agree, but it truly does not matter.
Yeah.
Captain Uthar, still of his name, is steering the Dragon Wing kind of toward the coast to lose these ships. They're sloops, technically. I do not know what that means. I could have looked it up and just did not.
It means they're slower, like they're smaller, faster ships.
Great. A sloop. It's a word I'm about to say 87 times.
I love it.
So the storm breaks in the night after 2 full days of raging over the Dragon Wing. And with the ships still trailing behind them, Roran, Jode, and Uthar go to the captain's quarters to strategize about how they're going to lose these pursuers. All their options are shitty, basically. It's either get caught on the open water, fight a magician, combat fight.
Don't do that.
Board the ships, fight a magician, or ground the ship and get hunted inland by the Razak.
Yeah, they're all bad options.
Shitty options on shitty options. Jode mentions something called the Boar's Eye, and the hardened, like, beefy ship's captain visibly bulks when Jode just brings this up. And Jode taunts Uthar at this point to try to get him to buck up and try sailing the Boar's Eye.
I love this.
Yes, Roran, along with all of us, are in the dark here. About what the fuck is this Boar's Eye?
Yeah.
And I think it's Uthar who just goes, it's the maw of the ocean, boy. And we're like, okay, more though, please.
It reminded me of Jaws when that one hunter guy comes.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And he's talking about sharks.
Yes, precisely. That is how I picture Uthar.
Yeah, yeah.
So essentially, the Boar's Eye is a big ass whirlpool.
Oh, no.
The center, they say, is a league in diameter, and the arms of the whirlpool can be 10 to 15 miles across, and it sits like directly between 2 islands that make it impossible to sail like kind of around it to either side.
Holy crap.
Crazy town.
Yeah.
Countless ships have fallen victim to it. It's like a Bermuda Triangle on steroids kind of a vibe I'm getting.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be possible. This is according to like both Jode and Uthar going back and forth. It's supposed to be possible to cross if you time it perfectly at high or low tide. Because basically when it's between tides, when it's like going from low to high tide, it spins one way all the way down to the floor of the ocean.
Yeah.
And then the tide gets to its peak and it stops spinning. And then as the tide goes back from like low to high, it spins the other direction.
Oh, no.
All the way down. And then it stops when the tide's fully
That's
high.
cool.
It's so cool.
I love this.
So if you time it right, you're supposed to be able to cross it. Roran, naturally in this situation. So remember, they had those 3 very shitty options.
Right.
And the Boar's Eye.
Yeah.
Roran picks the craziest possible option.
Hell yeah, Roran.
Although it is kind of the only one. They'd get caught any other way.
Yeah.
And he gives a signature rousing Roran rant, trademark, to convince Uthar to do it. And the chapter ends with the captain agreeing.
This is that, like what he says to that captain in this next chapter. Or when I was like, I think Roran's my favorite character.
Yeah, Roran's really good.
It's really cool.
So that takes us to chapter 61, Running the Boar's Eye. The chapter picks up as the Dragon Wing draws closer and closer to the Boar's Eye, and the shit is suspenseful.
It's so wild.
As they begin to tack course for the whirlpool that night, they kill all the lights on board to confuse the sloops so that they can't see where their ship is going. This almost actually works. The sloops do realize, though, like early the next morning, and start gaining quickly on them.
Yes.
Roran climbs the mast to use a spyglass to see the titular eye. And he says it is the size of an island. He can see it churning. It's so wild. And he's horrified because he can tell they've like almost missed the tides and missed their chance. He can tell the timing's not perfect. And he's like, oh, fuck. We are sailing into this thing.
Yeah.
So Uthar sets every spare hand on deck to rowing, and I love this whole section because it's basically all scored to like the backbeat of the oar master's drum, like constant thrumming, which is crazy. As they begin to cross the eye, Roran's watching the minutes tick by, wondering if they'll be fast enough to outrun the currents and the tides, and if the sloops, if they're able to do it, are the sloops going to be able to do it as well, because they're still getting closer.
Yeah.
And your boy Baldur brings Roran up some lunch.
Hell yeah.
I know. And they sit watching the whirlpool gain speed. Baldur finally sees it. He's horrified. And they're just watching it churn faster and faster.
Terrifying.
Roran sends Baldur to tell Uthar about the speed gaining and then ties himself to the mast to wait out the rest of the crossing. Just unhinged vibes.
He's losing his mind.
He's losing his mind. With the gaping center of the eye over 9 miles wide, he says, and audibly howling wing, a freaking cyclone forming above it in the air, and the vortex at the center widening by the minute, Roran finally wonders if mayhaps he's gone too far.
He's like, I think I might have pushed this one too far.
And I think he might be right.
Yes.
And I will try not to bore you too much with my poor man's retelling of what is really a tensely written and fun chase scene with like amazing descriptions.
Yes.
It's so good. Like
It's
if you
very
aren't
good.
reading this book and just listening to us summarize it, you're insane. Go at least read this chapter.
This chapter is a banger.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. But suffice it to say, as the dragon wing strains to break free of the whirlpool, Roran is swinging like wildly side to side from the top of the mast.
Yeah.
The sloops are still gaining. The crew's rowing for their lives, like just dying below decks, basically. Roran finally cuts himself loose and barely makes the climb down the rigging to grab an oar to help rowing.
Yeah, because people are like passing out. They've been rowing so long, right?
Yes, and all the frenzied drum beating in the world can't keep the dragon wing from stopping dead in the water. It's I just got chills.
Yeah.
Describing it
It's
myself.
wild.
It stops dead in the water as it's being pulled by the current. So at this point, I think they're like just past center.
Yeah.
And they're trying to row their way out of the current and they stop.
They can't. They're stuck. Yeah.
Rowing. Stopped. Crazy. The villagers keep falling at the oars with exhaustion, being replaced immediately by someone fresh. So
Good thing they have so many.
Yes, their only advantage here right now is bodies on oars. And after Roran can't row for another second, he staggers up to the deck to watch their fate unfold with Uthar. The sloops are barely half a mile from the dragon wing, but closer to the vortex, and none of the ships appear to be moving. For like a long time, Roran's standing on the deck and everything's just frozen in place.
Wild.
But then the subtlest of shifts occurs. Roran can feel it under his feet, and the dragon wing starts edging the slightest bit forward while the sloops are dragged one by one into the maw.
Hell yeah.
Into the middle. Just as Roran loses sight, a flaming green arrow flies from the depths. Fucking magicians. It explodes on one of the dragon wing's sails, and small fires break out around the deck. Everyone starts hacking at the burning pieces of ship and throwing them overboard until they're able to mitigate the fire risk enough that they're gonna be fine. They are still in the whirlpool at this point. Like people are still rowing like crazy.
Like on the edge of the whirlpool, right?
They're still making their way out, but they're like
Crazy.
making forward progress. So they know they're going to be okay, but it's still going to be hours of this like frenzied rowing, which is crazy. Uthar confirms this, and he says just only because they have enough manpower to keep rowing, but they won't actually make it out until the eye gets between cycles. So they're just gonna have to row to like stay vaguely in place.
Slowly.
Inching piece by piece, and once it stops churning, then they'll be able to row their way out.
Wow.
The chapter and this episode summaries end with the waters finally calming, betraying no hint of the horror that Roran and his crew managed to escape. And like, goddamn, Dane.
Galbator's gonna be so pissed. Can you imagine Gal hearing about that?
Dude, no,
They burned the harbor at Tyr. They stole my best boat. They killed one of my mages. They shot my leather blocka, and they sunk 2 of my ships.
3
of my ships.
Yes. Crazy. Roran's a maniac.
Yes.
He's insane.
He's a madman.
Yes, so that gripping end of this episode's chapters leaves us with only one place to go.
Where?
Analysis.
Yeah.
It's time for analysis.
And the gaping maw of a whirlpool is always a sign to me that we're hearkening to the Odyssey in some way.
There we go.
But when I got down to thinking about it, I'm kind of getting the theme overall for this section of Odysseys, like lowercase o,
Okay.
Odysseys, which is just a shorthand basically for a long and arduous journey. So that's really what I'm seeing in general running through this section. The major themes in the Odyssey is really where I see these ties. Their return, guest writer friendship, testing, and omens are what comes up again and again throughout the Greek epic. And I think the extent to which we're really seeing all of these ideas in both Eragon and Roran's storylines drives home this feeling that I have that they're each really on their own Odyssey here. So let's start with Eragon.
Let's do it.
So in terms of return, obviously, he's setting out in this section of chapters to make his way back to the Varden after his long trial of training in the face of his like ever worsening back injury. So he's kind of at the beginning point of the return part of his Odyssey, I would say.
Yeah.
And as far as guest right friendship, he's obviously been a guest in the elven city of Elismira. I think they've hosted him to the height of their ability. Their like interpersonal skills notwithstanding.
Yeah.
I think they've showed him a good time.
It was a nice time.
Yeah.
He got to go to an elven rave.
Yes, that's true. And I think the gifts he's receiving on his departure in this section particularly are really a huge tie into this idea of like being given this guest right, being treated as an honored part of their society, and then being sent off as like kind of a hero to return home.
Yes.
That's essentially, partially at least, what happened to Odysseus at the end of the war as he's headed back home to chaos. So TBD.
Doesn't end well for him.
No. Plus, I think in this section, we obviously get a really great glimpse at his friendship with Auric, which is always a highlight. So I'm like guest right friendship for sure. Testing as a theme. I feel like it would be insane for me to go on about how this ties to Eragon's storyline.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious. And as far as omens go, I don't know if it gets more like classic Greek portent, omen, oracle all wrapped into one than the raven blocked in this like albino raven that talks in limericks.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure, put it on the Isle of Crete and call it a day.
Yeah. That
We
fits
get it.
right in.
Yes. And to top off the scene with the raven, it actually starts with Eragon having that spooky dream about Angela's prophecy. So it's like, we get it, Chris. It's an omen. It's a prophecy.
We get it. He can see the future, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. And I will say, I guess for me, as far as the prophecies in this series have been concerned so far, I like Blogden's the best.
Okay.
I'm going to read it.
Yeah, read
just
it again.
the like second portion. So he says the line about the father. His first limerick is kind of just goofy, I would say. And then when Eragon asks what, he says, you are as blind as your father. And then Eragon's like, you know my daddy? And then Blagden's like, quote, while two may share two, and one of two is certainly one might be two. What do you think that means?
Okay, so this is one of those ones where I actually know what it means.
Yes.
But what I will say, so I'm not going to pretend to make up a thing.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, like, when I first read this, I wrote this on a lined piece of paper and was trying to like figure out what it might mean.
I feel like this is a fun use of prophecy because it's like almost so gibberish that you're just like, what?
Yeah. So I originally thought it had to do with, like dragons, more dragon eggs. And dragons.
I like that.
Yeah.
But see, I feel like, maybe I had that thought, but then I was like, but 3 eggs. I don't know.
Yeah.
TBD.
That's why I was like, if you add 2 with 1, that's 3. Yeah.
You're doing full like numerology.
Yes.
You've got like a serial killer, like murder board, red string.
And I really regret to inform you, I was completely wrong.
I do like it though. I mean, knowing where it's going, I think it's a fun like little hint that you're just like, well, this is goofy, but what is happening?
I will say we're not going to spoil anything for this, but there's been 3 visions and this. Well, 2 visions really and this. It all hit point when you put them all together. Yeah. I'm just wondering though too, did Oramus do Eragon dirty by skipping ancient prophecy maths as part of his course schedule? You know when like Arya was like, and that's divination magic. You probably can't see the future, but don't try it.
Yes, and you're like, what?
And then Oramus never brought it up.
Crazy town. Absolutely insane. His trip through the eye of an eldritch whirlpool brings up a lot of like Scylla versus Charybdis, rock at a hard place imagery. That's straight from the pages of the Odyssey.
Yes,
if anyone's never read it.
Wild.
It's 2 sea monsters, which is like kind of the traditional snake monster. That's Scylla. Charybdis is a giant whirlpool sea monster.
It's dope.
And there's no way through the strait that they have to sail through except for to go between and like cut to one side or the other. Although Odysseus chose to court the sea monster rather than the whirlpool here. So maybe things will end better for Roran than Odysseus, who chose wrong, I think. Roran chose the whirlpool, and I think maybe that's the choice.
Well, Roran hasn't yelled at a god anytime soon, so he'll probably be fine.
TBD. So I think for Roran, as far as return goes, while his journey might be in a lot of ways an exodus from his homeland, I like that his odyssey is more of a return to his love and his values, which both revolve around his drive to protect the people around him.
Yeah.
So I like that as far as his return in this section. And I think, again, having his internal monologue about like revolving around, have I gone too far? Am I going to be able to protect them?
Yeah.
Like that threat of failure, that threat of guilt is really what's driving this odyssey of his, this return of his.
Yeah, he's gonna push it to the limit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As far as like guest right friendship, for me, we're definitely more on the friendship side of things, but obviously he's on a captain's ship. He is a guest in a lot of ways. But I think the way that Uthar and Jode like bring Roran into their confidence and respect him as a decision maker here is a real demonstration that he might be starting to make more peer level friends than the people of Carvajal. It's kind of an interesting tension to me because his relationships with the people in Carvajal have evolved into something that's very deferential, something where Roran like doesn't have a lot of understanding and needs to be a strong leader for them. But with Jode and Uthar, I liked their interactions a lot when they're trying to decide where to go and what to do.
It's a cool part of the book, yeah.
Yeah. Notable exception, though, here for your boy Baldur, who is as good a friend as a crazed and grizzled dictator could ask for. Baldur is a 20 out of 10.
I would agree. I feel like Balor has been his sidekick the whole time.
100%, yeah. And as far as testing goes, I think hot on the heels of Roran's scenes, like I talked about in the last episode, and the theme of threats to his like identity, essentially, or like threats to his competency, the decision he makes to run the Boar's Eye is the biggest test of his resolve and leadership yet, for sure.
Yes.
No bones about it. The writing of his scenes, like lashed to the mast and watching the ship approach its doom, like it's about as epic Greek poetry as it gets for me. So I think just the writing style too reinforces this a lot. The descriptions of the Boar's Eye, maw of the ocean, like we're getting...
It's very mythic.
Yes, big Homer vibes here, I think. And I think this really drives home the connection to Roran being on his own odyssey.
Yes.
Of course. And as far as omens go, just want to wrap up here with our connections to odysseys. In Roran's plotline so far in this book, we've seen a lot of storms as omens. I think it actually is continuous throughout.
Yeah.
Especially this book.
Oh, yeah. It's talked about numerous times, right? Didn't we have Eragon just go, I can feel a storm?
Yes, yeah. He feels a storm brewing. Yeah. There was the storm that triggered like the resurgence of his back spasms.
Yes.
There's a lot of storm imagery. There was a storm in Carvajal right before Roran had that fight with Sloane and they got attacked. And storms on storms on storms.
Storms on storms on storms.
Yes. So we've seen a lot of storms as omens. We understand this is a device Christopher Paolini is very comfortable with. And the one that breaks into clear skies just as they approach the Boar's Eye, I think for me is such a good like little detail that Christopher Paolini kind of wove in here to prime us to like lean into the tension of the whirlpool scene, because we can expect it, I think, to turn out all right for our guy in the end. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, the storm broke, it did clear up, and now certain death, but maybe not. Maybe we could just have fun, like being scared for a minute, because I don't think he's actually going to die.
We could be in tension with Roran. Yeah.
I think so, a little bit. I think that's kind of the vibe I was pulling from that.
I love that analysis, man. Do you think it was fair for Roran to put everybody in? This is really about your analysis. That was great. I'm just wondering, since you're talking so much about this moment, do you think it was all right for Roran to do that?
It's definitely a conflict that comes up in the Odyssey, because Odysseus, over the course of that poem, he goes from 3 ships down to no ships by the time he comes limping back home. He has he's the king of his country. He has his entire country's army that he's sailing back from this war. And by the end of 10 years,
he's the only one to return, right?
I kind of think so.
I think it's just him.
Got to vibe check the Odyssey.
Yeah, it's been a while for
I'm pretty sure it's just him.
I'm sure he loses the whole crew.
Yeah.
Well, all the crews, rather.
Yes. So I think it definitely is part of the positioning of that story as well, to say, like, who is he to make that choice? I mean, he's a king. Roran's a military dictator, I guess. I guess in a lot of ways, it's almost like you're saying when you cede your trust to a teacher, to a mentor, to a leader.
Yeah.
Do they have the right to make dangerous decisions on your behalf? I don't know that I really have an answer for that, to be honest. I just think it's a good question.
It's a good question. I think I would say for Roran, yeah.
in this situation.
Well, because I feel like the people of Carvajal know the stakes.
Yeah.
So they've given him the responsibility, and he's decided he's going to risk it all.
Yes. And I think, too, I guess the only other thing I'd say about this very specific situation is that this is a risk he's courted time and time and time and time again. So, like, they've seen him be crazy. They've seen him certainly risk their lives in numerous ways. And, like, I think if they're still here, it's something that, like, they're unconsciously acquiescing to.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah. No, I agree. That was a great analysis, man.
Thanks. I just really like the Odyssey and also don't remember how it ends. No, I do remember how it ends. I just don't remember if he's alone or not when he gets back.
Do you think Eragon's going to come back to Snowfire? Snowfire's all old, sitting on the
yes,
sitting on the porch.
He's going to have to fight off Snowfire's suitors, the island of suitors, after his gorgeous piece of horse flesh.
Yes. Well, taking a hard pivot away from that to our deep dive this week. Deep dive. For this episode's deep dive, I want to talk about something that I really like in this series so far, and that is the hate that Vanir the elf has for Eragon.
Yes.
And to a lesser extent, honestly, the humans in general and the hate that the elves have for the humans, it kind of seems like. And I'm going to quote him here so we can hear it again. This is Vanir. He says, "For 80 years after the fall of the Riders, we held no hope of victory. We survived by hiding ourselves through deceit and magic, which is but a temporary measure. For eventually, Galbatorix will be strong enough to march upon us and sweep aside our defenses. Then, long after we had resigned ourselves to our fate, Brahmin Jode rescued Saphira's egg. And once again, a chance existed to defeat the foul usurper. Imagine our joy and celebration. We knew that in order to withstand Galbatorix, the new rider had to be the most powerful than any of his predecessors, more powerful than even Vrail. Yet how was our patience rewarded? With another human like Galbatorix, worse, a cripple.
Whoa.
You doomed us all, Eragon, the instant you touched Saphira's egg. Do not expect us to welcome your presence."
Who, buddy?
That is a thorough talking to.
He got the reading of a lifetime.
Yes.
Eragon. That was in like his first or second fight
I think
with
it's
Vanir.
right when they have that fight that you were talking about a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
Is right around then.
Okay.
So here's the thing.
I didn't think it was the first time they met though.
No,
I think it's
no.
like a little later
It's when like he gets pissed and finally uses magic.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he is absolutely right. Vanir's absolutely right. I agree with Vanir.
Damn.
Yeah.
You got points.
Yeah, the way that Christopher
Vanir is the rare in story. What do the haters say? Who's right? I know this is your deep dive.
This is my deep dive. But I'm attracted to the haters. I get pulled in. I can't help it. The way that Christopher Paolini made the elves in this world so much more than any other race so far.
Yeah.
It makes sense that Vanir feels this way. From Vanir's perspective, the elves are the only reason the humans are in the Dragon Bond anyway.
That's correct. He's right about that.
Yeah. Historically, the elves are the only ones that let them in. And then the only reason all the dragons and famous elven order of immortal knights died was because of one of those humans.
That's correct.
I mean, it's not looking good for the humans.
No, we suck. Remember, we were made from dirt.
Yes, we're.
Curse you, Sindri.
Yes, damn you, Sindri. Also, Vanir is probably hoping for a capable warrior and magician to be the new hero that's going to save his race.
That's an interesting take on it.
Yeah, and instead he got a bean farmer with a chronic pain condition that learned how to sword fight 6 months ago and didn't know how to read until 4 months ago.
It's not his fault he couldn't read.
I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying that's what Vanir got delivered.
That's true.
Finally,
That's fair.
Galbatorix is supposed to be a very powerful and evil magician, a user with he's a great and powerful magic user with dark powers at his disposal, an elf with a natural affinity for magic and 100 years practicing. Its art would be the perfect candidate, I bet, to Vanir.
Yeah.
He isn't wrong.
Yeah.
Like, no, Eragon.
Stronger, faster, better at magic, a lifetime to practice this skill.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I'm actually bummed when after Eragon gets healed and beats Vanir, that Vanir changes his mind. Or that at least changes his mind so quickly. I think Vanir has the right to be pissed, and the new writer is not one of the elves. And even after the change, Eragon is still young, he's still untrained, and is newly in his elf-like body. All that stuff about magic is still true. I think Vanir should hold his anger because at the very least, even if he doesn't hate Eragon for being human, he would totally be within reason. Like, he'd be okay to dislike the risk Eragon poses as a new writer rather than someone like Vanir himself. I really like this part of the book.
Yeah.
And I would just say I'm only hyper fixating on it because I really think it's well done of Christopher Paolini. My only critique here would be he should have kept it. I don't think be scared of letting someone hate your protagonist. let Eragon sit with the fact that there's elves out there who are like, I mean, we're going to help because this is all we got, but we're not happy about it. You know?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, the tension is good. I think maybe part of it for Vanir, or a bigger part, an outsized part of it, maybe I'd say, is the like kind of might is right mentality. So
totally.
When he gets beaten by Eragon, he's like, well, now I don't have any ground to talk shit to you, which as you pointed out, because of the magic stuff, because of the age stuff, like isn't necessarily true, but like maybe that's part of Vanir's character that's not been as fleshed out. We don't know that. I'm taking a stab, but
yeah, no, I think that's fair. It's for criticism. I'm not gonna defend Vanir, like only because like I don't, he's a good character even though he's wrong.
Yeah.
I just thought that we need more of this. I think this book needs more. When I said that Ajahad was a little weird because he was just like perfect from the get-go.
Yeah.
It's not that like I didn't like Ajahad. It's just it makes more
better.
I love Idris Elba. I love our
better
our King Daddy. But I do think that like there's an air of unrealisticness that pulls me out, even though we are in Dragons and Magic. I talk about it all the time. I think that Vanir is part of the realism that like keeps it in. You know what I mean?
I think that's a really good point. And I think, the fact that like Eragon maybe doesn't get as much in-world skepticism as you'd expect to see, especially from the elves. Maybe that's part of why we find it so easy to call him a bean farmer and clown on him a little bit. Because it's like, well, in the world, he just is God. Like, he just is the most, he has a dragon. He's strong and fast and powerful magically. Like,
and everyone's nice to him and everyone likes him.
Yes.
And like, he's learns fast. Like, I think we make fun of him a little bit because he's goofy. But I also think you're right, because there's not much else to pick on him about.
Yes.
Other than these, his internal monologue, which is a little funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which actually brings us to what are the haters saying now that we're clowning on Eragon.
Actually, you should do your research, huh? Have you even read the book?
What are the haters saying?
There is an index in the back, right?
This is literally derivative.
This episode, for what are the haters saying, we have Oramus.
Okay.
I want to talk about Oramus.
Okay.
Now, this is a certain criticism that I remember even all the way back when I was first on the internet, like 2009, 10-ish, when all this was happening.
People hate my emotionally constant dad? That's what you're trying to tell me?
Yes.
I don't believe it.
This is one of the loudest and most persistent critiques out there. In the first season, I touched on it. The very first season of our podcast and the very first episode of our podcast, I said essentially that Star Wars is very directly the monomyth of the hero's journey as described by Joseph Campbell.
Yep.
And that most works of fantasy and science fiction are also that. Actually, most works of just fiction are.
Yeah.
Because of that, they have a lot of the same tropes and follow a lot of the same journeys.
Yep.
So when Oramus shows up in our story, the haters were instantly ready to call the existence of Oramus proof that their belief that the inherent cycle is just a ripoff of the Star Wars stories. They go, that's Yoda. That they explain. They go like, hey, look, see how similar they are? They're both ancient and very old. They're both hermits, or relatively secret and removed from society.
That's correct.
They both pick up where another teacher left off.
That's true.
They're both last members of their ancient orders.
Yes.
They're both powerful and past their prime, unable to help against the fight against evil. They're both wise and intelligent, and both help our main characters finish their training and focus the teaching on better understandings of the self.
All true, all true. You did leave out one important point.
What?
You said they pick up where another teacher left off. I think you meant another younger, hotter teacher.
That's very true. They both pick up where the hotter guy left off.
Yes.
So it's a clear-cut case, right? Absolute ripoff.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Boo. Oh, no, not boo.
No, this is basically the outline of the trope that's called the old wise man.
Yes.
Which is described as, let me just read that for you. Ancient or very old, a hermit removed from society, often from a different time or place, making them foreign.
Oh.
Yeah, masters or experts in many arts and magic that others are not.
I don't know anyone like that.
Yeah, powerful but ultimately past their prime and unable to get involved in the story for some reason. Often to teach the main hero their morals or guide them to find themselves to understand their journey.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Wow, that weird trope.
Wow.
That sounds exactly like the trope. What do you know? Sounds pretty similar. And I cannot, look, I get haters. Sometimes I get flustered when I'm up here because I'm like, oh, haters. When this response is explained to the haters online, the most common response they give back is that even still, they're so similar in character.
Yes.
And to that I actually say, I seriously disagree with you. Let me explain using the only real thing we get out of Yoda, which is in The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
And for this, just so you know, I watched every single clip on YouTube of Yoda. Like every single episode, all of it, all right? First, Yoda doesn't want to train Luke as he seems impatient and reckless. He talks to Obi-Wan in front of Luke from the grave, you know?
Yes.
And Yoda also thinks Luke is too old. That's not true about Oramus and Eragon at all. Oramus reaches out to save Eragon in book 1, asks him to come to him, and he's happy to train Eragon.
Yes.
Luke, while training, is seen dirty, and it looks like it's rough in the swamp. He's eating disgusting food he clearly doesn't like. He takes food in that movie out of a pot, looks at it, puts it right back in the pot. Eragon, on the other hand, is treated to a life of luxury, complete with hot running water, fresh new digs, and eventually an upgraded body.
Hey.
Yeah. His discomfort is caused by his physical injury that he got while facing a minion of the enemy of Gal, right?
Yes.
Yoda is a weird and eccentric guy. His pattern of speaking and funny jokes are really strange.
Yes.
Oramus might be wise like Yoda, but the two are very different. Yoda speaks in riddles and odd backward phrases and cackling laughter. He's a green monster.
Everybody's got their shtick, Dane.
I'm not downing on Yoda, but Oramus is more stoic than Yoda, and his humor resides in pretending not to notice Eragon's discomfort, confusion, or pain.
Yes.
The funny moments we get with Oramus are him going, "What's the matter?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oramus also employs a more questions-based teaching style and mostly answers and straightforward answers. Yoda is very much not a part of the world. He isn't any race or species we hear or know about in Star Wars. Although he is a Jedi, he doesn't really explain the order or history of the Jedi in any great detail to Luke. He's completely separate in the original trilogy. Oramus is an elf living in their nation of elves.
Yeah.
He has only been hiding by those outside of his nation.
Yes.
He isn't separated from the world of Algazia at all.
Yes, it definitely seems like all the elves, or at least most of the elves, know about Oramus and are like sworn to secrecy. Remember, Vanir was like, you get to train with like the revered master, you know?
Right. He's not disconnected.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of this.
Yes.
And in The Empire Strikes Back, Yoda teaches Luke by pushing Luke in extreme physical training, like running and handstanding, while Yoda's like on his back and like on his like feet.
Yeah.
And lecturing Luke about what he can't do, mostly not following the dark side, right?
Great. Yes.
Oramus only tests Eragon's physical abilities one time directly.
Yeah.
And after that, turns that teaching and training over to another teacher.
Yeah.
Instead, he teaches Eragon yoga, something that isn't physical enough to hurt even Eragon's back for the most part. And they do it in silence together.
That's nice.
I got 2 more points and I'll get off this train. Yoda is training of Luke seems to stem solely around the Force when it isn't about physical exertion, or a combination of Force while doing physical exertion. Oramus seems determined to teach Eragon how to think properly. While he teaches Eragon about magic, he also teaches Eragon about the joys of scholarship and even art. There's a big part of this at the end when Oramus gives him his story.
Yes. And it's like, this is as important as all these like weapons of war.
Yes. And this is the bond we have together. This is something that you have become like, you now love and I love and we share.
Oh,
it's very beautiful.
That's so nice.
Yoda doesn't want Luke to leave. Luke famously leaves anyway. Oramus is like, yeah, you should fucking go.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll stop there because I truly like, I can't continue and I truly could, but we need to at some point cut it off, right? Real haters are still not going to be convinced. They'll say,
wild.
but Dane, both are ancient members of an ancient and dead order. They're both fighting a past member of said order. That isn't a trope. It's plagiarism. And to that, you will not be pleased or convinced that an ancient teacher who is a master of a forgotten or secret art teaching a hero in that ancient art to fight and learn about themselves as a troop, then there's no winning. I can't convince if you're not gonna like go along with me, haters, you're just dead set on making this a thing. It's not. To those who are open, haters, hey, it's Dane. Come here. I'd love to say to you that they are similar.
Yeah.
Okay. No one's gonna deny that. These two characters can be easily compared.
Yeah.
Christopher Paolini has said the story of the Inherent Cycle, as I have mentioned in the past, is directly or in part inspired by the Star Wars. Just as Robert Jordan has said that his story, The Wheel of Time, is directly or in part inspired by the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
That does not make Moraine from Wheel of Time Gandalf from Lord of the Rings.
No.
There aren't people far and wide saying it's a carbon copy of that story. So haters, come here. It's okay. They're not the same. This isn't Star Wars. You can just stop. We can just stop here. All right?
You believe us.
Yeah.
We research.
Hey, if you've learned something and you're feeling better, I love you. This is great. If not, please go away. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You can stay,
You
but
can
just
stay.
really consider
I
that
know.
you can hold two things to be true at the same time. It
Yeah.
can be inspired by and not be a copy.
Yeah, it's wild. How'd you feel about this episode?
Ooh, well, I don't know if you could tell by the way that I read the Boar's Eye chapter, Dane, but I loved it.
You were into it?
Loved it. Loved reading it. Would go back and read it again immediately.
Yeah.
It's such a good scene in Roran's journey. I love it a lot. I also love the Odyssey, so I think making all those connections was very fun for me. Whatever tenuous grasp I have on themes in literature, I don't give a fuck, because if I got to compare big whirlpool to big whirlpool, I'm good.
You're like, I see.
Whirlpool. I did it. And now I'm going to make up a bunch of shit to support that hypothesis.
I just did the same thing. I was like, Oramus, Yoda. They're making a comparison, and so can
And
I.
I don't like it. Hey, that's true, though. The monomyth is real. If people don't believe the monomyth is real, I cannot help them.
Well, it's just like, what are you going to do then? Like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Yes, totally agree. Do you
On
have
that.
Any final thoughts?
Do I have any final thoughts?
on this group of chapters?
I mean, I'm getting kind of sad. We're getting near the end here.
I know. What are we, two more episodes, 12 and 13, and we're going to be wrapping up Eldest?
I know. We're almost done, man.
Ah.
Well, if you want to be with us for the last two of Eldest, then tune in next time. But thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure to rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts, support on Patreon, and check out our social media at Is This Just Fantasy Pod on TikTok or at Just Fantasy Pod on Instagram and Twitter. If you have any questions or just want to write to us about the podcast or how angry you are about Yoda and Oramus,
Star Wars fans, come through.
we would love to hear from you. And you can email us at isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com.
Yes, and if you want to keep pace and continue reading along with us, speed run through the end of the book. I think we might even drop the next two episodes, the last two of this book, 2 in 1 week.
Ooh,
double up.
Let's do it.
I'm excited about it. So
Okay.
there's a potential there. So you might be reading a lot. But if you want to keep up for the very next episode alone, we're going to be covering chapter 62, To Aberon, through chapter 67, The Storm Breaks. The storms aren't done, Dane.
Yes, it's over.
More storms. Storms on storms.
Oh no, I thought they broke.
Well,
Two nerds and we love our fantasy. Come on and listen to us next time. Find out what our deep dive will be. Thanks for catching our show.